Hello everybody and welcome back to another video of English No Big Deal. My name is David.
And I'm Maddie.
So before getting into the content of today's video, I would like to ask you guys a few questions. And these questions are extremely important because they're going to help you determine whether you should watch this video or not, or what kind of benefit that the series that we're working on is going to have for you. So the first question that I have for you is, have you ever found yourself being stuck trying to find the right word to say something in English to someone? And even though you knew that you could say it, but in that moment, your mind just didn't give you the words that you need or the ideas that you need in order to convey your meaning. And the second question that I have for you is, have you ever asked yourself why other people could speak English as effortlessly as they wanted, but when it comes to you and your turn to speak, you're struggling so hard even though you've been studying, learning, practicing with English for a long time? And by a long time, I mean for years. You went on YouTube and you saw all the people speaking English very fluently and effortlessly in their videos, even though English is just their second language, and you admire them, but you started wondering why you couldn't say it like that, or you couldn't speak English as fluently as they do. And the answer for those questions is, maybe you have the knowledge because you've been learning English for a long time. However, when talking or communicating in person with someone, you can't pull knowledge out and use it in split seconds. With that being said, the only thing you need to use is your skills. And so in order to turn your knowledge into skills, not only that you have to continue absorbing your knowledge, but you have to somehow practice with it in order to turn it into your long-term skills. And when it becomes your long-term skills, you don't have to struggle that much, or you don't have to try so hard to pull out the words in order to convey your message. For you to turn your knowledge into your skills, we are working on 75 conversations related to 75 different topics in order to help you broaden your skills and ability and knowledge as well. And for each topic, we have a total of 3 videos. So the first one is going to be the main conversation. We call it an official conversation, where you have all the main ideas, where we have the context for you to be diving into as well. So if you get the context from those conversations, chances are the information and the context of that video is going to be embedded deeper in your head. And the second video is about the 15 phrases that are the most important in our conversation between Maddie and me. And in this video, we're gonna talk about the pronunciation of those 15 phrases. So the things that you should keep in mind if you want to improve your pronunciation so other people can understand you. But more importantly, we're gonna give you some of the ideas of how to use those phrases, as well as giving you guys some examples at the end, so you have the opportunity to practice along with us. And don't forget that when watching this video, you need to practice along, or you need to shadow along with us if you want your watching time to be effective. And the last video is about 15 questions that Maddie is going to ask you guys for each topic, for each official conversation. And in order to answer these questions, you need to watch the conversation until the point that you fully understand its context and meaning. Just a quick tip when you're watching the official conversation, that you have to shadow along. But in order to shadow along, you have to pause the conversation, pause the video, and then repeat what you just heard. So that's just a few things that I would like to tell you guys in advance so you can learn from these conversations and videos most efficiently. But that's not the main topic or the main content of today's video. So today's video, we're going to talk about 15 phrases that are the most important, the most essential in Conversation 12. And let's ask Maddie what the conversation is all about. So Maddie, can you please talk a little bit about the conversation?
Conversation 12 is all about traveling and what tourists and visitors want to do when they visit a new place. And who doesn't like to talk about their experiences while traveling the world? So these phrases and vocabulary words will help you have a smooth conversation. Now keep in mind that these phrases and vocabulary words are very versatile. So you can use them in other situations, but they are very helpful when you're talking about travel. Now, with that amazing thing in mind, let's get started.
To start our list of 15 phrases today, the first one we have is frequent and then a place.
By the way, is it alright if I bother you for a moment? I just need your opinion.
Sure, what is it?
Well, my family's coming for a visit and I wanted to show them around the city, but the places I frequent aren't anything that would excite them. Do you have any suggestions?
So the pronunciation point that you should be aware of here is the word frequent. Frequent. And if you look it up in the online dictionary, especially the online Oxford dictionary, it's gonna tell you to pronounce this word as frequent. Frequent. Alright, so the first syllable, it has the E sound, the long E sound. But the second one is going to be the primary stress. And you don't want to do that. Because in normal conversations, in day-to-day conversations, native speakers will say this word as frequent. Frequent. Alright? Frequent. And notice that I stress the first syllable, not the second one. So the primary stress is going to be the first one. Frequent. Don't say frequent. Right? Frequent. And the second point here is that I already changed the S sound in the dictionary, the way that the IPA appears, into the sound, and I said frequent. 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 And the third point is upon the T sound at the end of this word. In order for you to sound more like a native speaker, you should stop the T sound. Frequent. Stop the T sound right there. And how do you stop it? You just have to put your tongue into the position as if you're about to say it, and then stop all the sound all at once. And you'll be able to make that stop T sound flawlessly.
To use this word properly, you have to take note that frequent is both a verb and an adjective. It's also really nice to know the adverb form of frequent, which is frequently. Now, what this word means is you go to a place often, or you visit a particular place so often, maybe every single day. And how this word was used in the conversation is, I don't think my family would like any of the places that I frequent. So I don't believe that my family would like any of the places that I go to often. Now, to understand this word in all of its forms a little better, I'm going to form some examples using each of them. So the verb form, I usually frequent this coffee shop. That means I go to this coffee shop a lot. Now, to use frequent in its adjective form, this coffee shop is my frequent place. That means, again, I go to this coffee shop all the time. And to use it in the last form, its adverb form, I frequently go to this coffee shop. So I just add the ly to frequent and I put it before the verb, meaning I go to this coffee shop or I visit this coffee shop all the time. So to give you guys some extra examples, I'll make one first. During the summer, many people frequent the amusement parks and swimming pools. So summer is a really great time to be outdoors. That's why people always or often go to the amusement parks or swimming pools.
To escape from the heat.
Exactly, yeah.
And since you talked about the coffee shop, and I'm actually a good fan of coffee shops, so I'm gonna make the second example as all of the coffee shops that I frequent have the French architecture.
Ooh, those must be beautiful coffee shops.
Right.
So you go to coffee shops a lot, but they have the French
And I love
architecture. Number 2, not that much of a and a noun.
Well, you know me. I'm not that much of a place explorer. I've only been to a few locations in and outside the city, but it still depends on what they are interested in.
Now, the pronunciation you need to keep in mind are just the connecting sounds for this phrase. So the first part of it is the connecting between much and of. You take that ch and connect it to of. Much of. Chov. Much of. And depending on the noun that you will either use a or an. And to know which one to use, it depends on the noun that you're using, whether it starts with a vowel or a consonant. Now, don't depend on the spelling of the word, but depend on the IPA of the word. So if you're using then the IPA of the word, the noun that you're using, has to start with a consonant. And if you're using a noun that starts with a vowel, then you'll use un. Now, either one that you're using, of will still connect to both of them. So for example, not that much of a, v, and the other one, not that much of an, vun. Not that much of a, not that much of an.
For its usage, if somebody is not that much of a noun, that means that person is not interested in it or they're not that great at it. So they do know a little bit about it, but they don't consider themselves as an expert at it. In the conversation, I refer to myself as a person who wasn't that much of a place explorer. And when I used it, I actually meant that I didn't go a lot. I didn't travel a lot. I didn't go to a lot of places, maybe because I wasn't a fanatic of exploring new places. That's why when Maddie asked me about some of the places that she and her family should go to, I was saying, no, I wasn't that much of a place explorer. Or if you guys are in love with cars and know a lot about cars, you can also call yourself a car fanatic, or a car enthusiast, or a car maniac. But if you are not good at it, you don't know so much about it, all the technical terms, all the problems the car has, stuff like that, then you can call yourself, yeah, I'm not that much of a car maniac, or I'm not that much of a car enthusiast, I'm not that much of a car fanatic. Now, let me give you guys one example. Even though I'm not that much of a car-savvy person, I can still come with you to the dealership to look for your new car.
Then you know a little bit about cars, but not enough to be very specific. But you'll still be helpful when going with them to buy their new car.
By saying I'm not that much of a car-savvy person, that tells the friend that I'm not going to be able to give you some technical insights, but I'm just there to support you.
And since you had one example, let me create another one. So, I understand your problem, but I'm not that much of a help since I'm not the boss. So maybe the person is coming to me for advice or to see if I could help them. But I'm saying I'm not that much of a help since I'm not the boss. So I'm telling them I can give you a little bit of advice, maybe help you a tiny bit, but the boss would probably be more help.
It's very straightforward when you say it to your friend because you don't want them to expect too much of you, right? And in the situation, you can decide it, but the only person who can decide it is the boss. That's why you want to be clear and straightforward about it by saying, I'm not that much of a help. I know it. So the only person who can help you is the boss. Number 3, far-flung.
It's a bit of everything. Since they're only going to be here for a short time, they don't want to go to any far-flung places.
This word's pronunciation can be a bit tricky, but I believe it's only going to take you a few times to practice until you get used to it. So far and flung. Far and flung. So make sure for the first syllable, you know that it has the R sound, not the OR sound. So don't say for, but say far. And then the second one is going to be flung. Flung. It has the sound and it ends with the sound. So we have flung, far flung, far flung.
To use this, if something is far flung, that means something is a long distance away from where you are or from where somebody else is. So, for example, foreign exchange students are far flung. They are far away from home. Maybe they're halfway across the world. Their family might be in Asia and they're in North America. So they are far flung. Going back to the conversation, I said, we don't want to go to any places that are far flung, meaning I don't want to drive a long ways away to get to the place to visit because they're only going to be here for a short visit. And it's a waste of my time to drive that far to get to the place. So another little quick example. I don't want to go to that mall. It's pretty far flung. That means that that mall that somebody else suggested or is talking about might be maybe 2-hour drive or a 6-hour drive. And that is a long distance away. It takes too long, and there might be nicer malls closer to home. So we're not going to that mall because it is far flung. And another example, it takes 6 hours to get to my sister's far flung house. So from where I'm at and where I live, it will take me 6 hours to drive to my sister's house. So her house for me is far flung.
And the word far-flung is a little bit different from remote or even secluded. Because if a place is far-flung, you have already had a place in mind in order to compare the distance between that location to the place you're talking about, right? So maybe it's a 6-hour drive or it's a 12-hour drive. But if a place is a remote place, then it's not only far, but it's not accessible. Not a lot of people go there because the distance is not drivable. Or you have to use some certain transportation means to get there. You can drive, but maybe the only way to get there is to fly there. And another example that I have for you guys is the internet and the technological development has helped millions of far-flung students acquire their education. And these students are living so far away from their school, maybe their college, maybe their high school, maybe their university, and the only way that they can acquire their education is through online. Maybe they set up some Zoom classes or something like that.
I knew a lot of people in high school who lived so far away from the school that the only way they could actually obtain their degree is through online homeschooling. This was a really big thing before, and it made it a lot easier because maybe they had to drive 2 hours just to get to school, which is a lot. So it's so much easier when the students are far flung to obtain their degree online. Number 4, have or has problems, trouble, or difficulty doing something. And I was having trouble deciding on the best places for them to see. Now for the pronunciation, follow along with me and learn how to properly pronounce these. So the first one, problem. That blum sound. Problem. And the next one, trouble. Trouble. That bull sound again. Trouble. Don't say trouble or trouble. Say trouble. Make that b sound soft. And the last one, difficulty. Difficulty. The culty. See how I'm rolling my tongue for that sound? Difficulty. Difficulty. Now practice these words slowly first and try to speed them up as you get more comfortable with them. It might sound awkward going slow, but again, as we've said before, it is better to say it awkwardly and correctly rather than fast and incorrect.
You use these expressions to say that you have a problem, you have trouble, you have difficulty with something. But instead of saying with something, you want to use doing something or in doing something here after the word difficulty, trouble, or problems. To use these words grammatically correctly, you need to know the word problem is a countable noun. Just because it's a countable noun, you can make it a plural, you can make it a singular, so it's up to you. So once again, you have I have a problem or I have problems in doing something. However, for the word trouble, you can't use it as a countable noun because it's uncountable. That's why for the word trouble, you can add an S at the end in order to turn it into a plural, and you don't want to use any article in front of it as well. You can't even say, I have troubles. But the only way you can use this word is, I have trouble, and then doing something. The word difficulty is a hybrid word, the way I call it, because it can either be countable or uncountable. And it's the opposite with the word trouble, because with the word trouble, you cannot have an S at the end. You cannot have an article in front But you can do these things with the word difficulty. So I have a difficulty or I have difficulties doing something. Now the first example that I have for you guys is I had a problem falling asleep last night. I had a problem falling asleep last night. I can also say I had trouble falling asleep last night. Or I had difficulties falling asleep last night.
And another example, I have a problem pronouncing some of the words in English. Another way, I have trouble pronouncing some of the words in English. And I have a difficulty pronouncing some of the words in English.
Number 5, the urban, suburban, rural area. Oh, Alberta has a lot of beautiful roads from the city of Calgary to the suburban and rural areas. So a road trip can be really fun to do. So these words are a little bit difficult to pronounce, especially the last word, rural. That's why the first thing we have to do here is to go over its pronunciation, or their pronunciation. The first one is urban. Make sure for the second syllable, you have the B sound to start it. You say suburban. You don't say suburban. Alright? So suburban. And the last one we have rural. And the reason this last word is the most difficult is because rural, it has 2 R sounds, and it's really hard for you guys to finish the first R sound and then, put your tongue and everything in the right position for the second roll in order to make the second R sound. But if you practice it frequently, then you'll be able to get it. So rural, rural, rural. So my suggestion right here is to separate them. The first syllable, say it slowly, and then after you get it, and then the second one, you start moving your tongue back to its position in the rolling position for the second rolling. Roll, roll, rural, rural, rural. The rural area, the rural area.
So to use these vocabulary words, let's first start with the word urban. So urban is connected to the city, and it is the center of the city. Maybe there's a lot of office buildings and skyscrapers. And with the second one, suburban, this is the outskirts of the city. It can still be within the city limits, but it's getting farther away from the core. Maybe there's a lot of residential neighborhoods and people living in the suburbs. Now, rural is connected to the countryside. It is farther away from the city. And this is an agricultural area. Maybe people are growing some corn or other kinds of crops. Or maybe they're raising some farm animals like cattle, horses, sheep. So rural is farther away from the city. And maybe the reason it is so beautiful is because it doesn't have a lot of sky rises. It's more green. You can see trees, maybe more open land, grass, as opposed to the urban areas where you see a lot of cement. You see a lot of skyscrapers. Everything is blocking your view from the natural scenery that you can see in the suburbs or in rural areas. I'll quickly create an example with one of these so you can understand it better. So I grew up in a rural community, so I know a bit about agriculture. Meaning I grew up farther away from the city and people in my community grew crops. So I was able to remember a bit about agriculture.
As opposed to some city slickers, they grew up in a city, so they didn't know anything about agriculture. They didn't know how to raise cattle, how to do farming, stuff like that. So I have another example for you guys here. She decides to move to the suburbs just to be closer to work. Like Maddie already explained, you can also say the suburban area, or you can also say suburbs. And for this particular word, it's usually in plural, so you have the S at the end. So she decided to move to the suburbs just to be closer to work.
Maybe she used to live in the rural community or farther away from the city. And if she moves to the suburbs, right on the outskirts of the city or town, then she's closer to work. It is less of a commute. Number 6, a must-see, have, do, or read.
But if you don't think it's a good idea, then I believe one of the first places to visit is the Calgary Tower. It's a huge tourist attraction and a must-see for visitors.
The pronunciation point you need to be aware of is upon the word must. You can do one of two things here. You can either drop the T sound or stop the T. Most people decide to drop the T sound because it's a lot easier. I'll give you a quick example. Must see, must see. So I'm dropping the T sound, and this is typically how most native speakers say it. But if you stop the T, here's what it'll sound like. Must see, must see. It's a lot more work for my mouth to do this. So for this phrase in particular, you can drop the T sound. Must see, must do, or must read, must read.
And these phrases can be used as both an adjective and a noun, and they are used to mean that something is interesting or good or beneficial enough for you to read, see, or do. For example, if a book is a must-read book, then that book is really good, interesting, and beneficial for you to read. And that's when I use must read as an adjective. But refer back to the conversation that I had with Maddie. I said, it's a must see. The place or the Calgary Tower is a must see. After the word must see, I don't have any other noun. That's why the word must see itself is a noun. The Calgary Tower is a must see for visitors. Now let us give you some examples so you know how to use these phrases correctly. The first one I have is Ha Long Bay is a must-see tourist attraction for visitors in Vietnam. Notice must-see, and then after that I have tourist attraction. So tourist attraction is what? Is a noun phrase. And must-see in this situation is used as an adjective. A must-see tourist attraction.
Another example, this book is a must-read. It is life-changing. So the reason this book is a must-read is because it will be so beneficial for you that it will change your life.
Maybe after talking with each other for a while, and then now we know like which one is important, which one is not, and the topic is really related to that book. And the book is gonna give you a lot of information that can be really beneficial to your problem or something like that. So it's a must read. It's a must read. And notice the way that Maddie used the word must read. And after must read, we don't have any noun or noun phrase, right? That's why it makes must read in this situation a noun itself. Number 7. You wouldn't do something unless, and then after that you use a clause.
I took them there the last time they visited. Instead of large tourist places, I was thinking more of the places that the locals go to. You know, something usually you wouldn't get to experience unless you talk to the right people.
So for the pronunciation here, you shouldn't say wouldn't, because it takes more time and effort to say it. In North America, native speakers will say it as wouldn't. So wouldn't, I drop the d sound and I say wouldn't. And the t sound has to be stopped at the end. So wouldn't.
To know how to use this phrase, first we need to go over unless clause. Unless clause is a conditional, similar to if clause. Unless means only if. Now that we know that, let's go over the rest of the phrase. So you're talking about something that you usually would not do, but you can think of maybe 1 or 2 situations where you would do that thing. Going back to the conversation, something you usually wouldn't get to experience unless you talk to the right people. So the right people is the conditional here, and the experience is the thing that can only happen if you talk to the right people.
But let me ask you something. So for the word talk. In your example, you say talked. You wouldn't experience unless you talk to the right people. So talked here has the ed part or not.
It can have both ed or no ed ending, unless you talk to the right people or unless you talked to the right people.
By turning the verb into its past tense, you're basically trying to indicate the possibility, which is really low here. So talking to the right people might not happen in the future or right now. That's why you want to use its past tense. But in case you want to use its present tense, it's fine too, because you're now saying that the possibility of talking to the right people is higher.
So in the conversation, like I said, unless you talk to the right people, I'm already taking the action to talk to people. I talked to David, and maybe I'll talk to a few other people to get their input of some of the best places to go to experience what locals do.
And this expression is really useful. That's why we should give them some examples, Maddie.
So one example being, you wouldn't be hired for that job unless you had a higher education. So the chances of being hired for that position is very low. Maybe the person I'm talking to only has a high school degree rather than a college degree. So their chances are low. They won't be hired for that position unless they had a higher education. So I'm putting it in the past tense, had a higher education, because maybe I already know that the person I'm talking to only has a high school degree rather than a college degree. So this is putting them at a disadvantage over the other applicants.
But if you don't know anything about that person's education, then it's safer for you to say, you wouldn't be hired unless you have good education. And another example that I have for you guys here is, I wouldn't change the original plan unless you had a better idea. So in this example, maybe I already know that you didn't have any better idea, so don't think about the fact that you could change my mind about changing our original plan.
That's very true. But if you didn't even ask my opinion in the first place and we've never had a kind of conversation, then it would be rude to say had, because then you're making an assumption. So if you don't know, then you could change it to have. But in this case, like you said, you already knew. So by saying had, it's not rude. Overlook.
The first spot is probably something you already know. It is called Scotsman's Hill, which overlooks the city, and this whole scenery looks best before sunset.
The pronunciation point you need to be aware of is upon the vowel sound overlook. Don't change that to oo. Don't say look. Look, not correct. Overlook, look. And another thing to keep in mind is the k sound. The k needs to be distinctly pronounced. Don't say overlook, overlook. No, not correct. Overlook, overlook.
The word overlook itself has multiple meanings. But in the conversation that I had with Maddie, I said, Scotsman's Hill overlooks the city. That means if you stand on top of the hill, you can also see the entire city. That's why Scotsman's Hill overlooks the city. So that's one example. To clarify it, I have another example. If you have a house that overlooks a river, that means from that house, you can see very vividly and clearly the river in front of it. The word overlook can also be used for a situation at work. When you want to be promoted for some position, but your boss just decides to overlook you, or you are overlooked by the boss for that position. Maybe because the boss is in favor of somebody else, and that person is having a much better opportunity to be promoted than you are. So in this situation, you are overlooked, or you are ignored for the position by the boss. So let me give you the first example. My bedroom window overlooks a beautiful garden. Why? Because from that window, I can see my beautiful garden. I can see that beautiful garden. But I didn't talk about myself in that sentence. That's why I said my bedroom window overlooks a beautiful garden.
So in this kind of example, you're probably describing to somebody what you can see outside of your bedroom window. And that's why you're not standing there, you're not doing anything else, but you're describing to another person what you can see. So that's why you're saying, my bedroom window overlooks a beautiful garden. Can you see that garden from any other point in the house? Maybe, but you don't have that high view overlooking the garden. One more example, my boss decided to overlook my small mistake. So this just means my boss decided to turn a blind eye and ignore my small mistake. It was a minor mistake, not a big deal. So he thought it was okay to ignore it.
Number 9. Though. Not a lot of tourists know the spot though, but it's a mind-blowing place to stop by and get stunning shots of the city. The pronunciation is very easy because there's just one word we're talking about here. So, though, the first thing you have to be aware of is the sound. Make sure you know that is a voiced consonant is not voiceless. So don't say though. Though is not correct. So, though. And if any of you guys are Vietnamese, then you can actually refer to the T sound in Vietnamese. So you say though. It's going to be a much easier way to say this word. So one more time, though or though. Both ways are correct as long as you're not saying though.
Now to use this word, you have to keep in mind that this word is a conjunction. And when it is used to add another fact or opinion, but it also makes the previous statement, fact, or opinion less strong. It is also a great way to change the topic or slightly change the topic of the conversation. Going back to the conversation video, David said, not a lot of tourists know this spot though. He was talking about what you can see at Scotsman's Hill and how it overlooks the city. And then he added, not a lot of tourists know this spot though. He's slightly changing the topic back to what some of my requirements were, that I didn't want a very large tourist attraction place. So if he had said, not a lot of tourists know this spot, but he doesn't have though, I might be like a little, It's a little awkward to change the conversation like that, but it could slide. So though just changes it a little bit and makes it less awkward when you slightly change the topic. So to understand this word better, let's give you some examples. One example being, you might not like her, though she does her work well. So maybe the topic was how bad this lady's attitude was, and I wanted to add in something positive. So I said, she does her work well. Had I have not had though, the whole sentence would sound very awkward. So saying, you might not like her, she does her work well. That would not make sense. So adding though helps slightly change the topic to a more positive aspect in this situation.
And I noticed that in that sentence, you use the word though just right after the first clause. But you guys can actually use the word though at the end of the sentence by saying, but she does her work well though. Another example that I have here is, I know it's late, but how late though? So I already know it's late, and I already show my acknowledgement that it is late. But how late though? I would like that person to shift their focus on the next thing that I would like to say or to ask. But how late though?
And we could change though to be in the middle of the sentence, saying, I know it's late, though how late is it? This has to kind of change the structure of the clause that comes after it, though how late is it? But it still conveys the same meaning, shifting the focus to the main topic or something that's more important than what was said before. Number 10, itinerary.
Oh, right! I completely forgot about that place. I'll put it down in the itinerary.
So when you look up this word in the Oxford Dictionary, it says that the pronunciation is itinerary. Now, it depends on who you talk to. They will change it to itinerary, which is one of the ways that I do it, and I've also heard many other people say it this way. Both ways are correct, but choose one that works best for you. You can say itinerary or itinerary, but you cannot say itinerary. Itinerary. It sounds very odd to native speakers. Don't do this. And if you have to, first say the word slowly. Itinerary. Itinerary. And once you get more comfortable with it, speed it up. Itinerary. Itinerary.
Itinerary is used when you want to talk about your travel plan. Maybe you're visiting a place, right? And in order to get to that place, you have to take a flight. And you now have a flight itinerary. And in that itinerary, it's going to show you the time that you have to wait at the airport, or how long the flight is going to take, or how many airports you have to go through. All of that kind of stuff. So itinerary is a very detailed plan for your traveling. Now going back to the conversation, Maddie said she'll put it in the itinerary. And if she put it in the itinerary, that means she and her family will visit that place.
So maybe I already had a long list of all of the places I wanted to take my family, like Scotsman's Hill, maybe Drumheller. So I can add whatever he said to the itinerary, to that other long list of places I want my family to visit. That's why I have this example for you guys. Your itinerary when visiting a new place should be detailed, otherwise you'll miss out. If maybe you only have 1 or 2 places you want to visit, you're missing out on all the other places you could go to and have really great experiences. That's why your itinerary needs to be detailed.
The more detailed your itinerary is, the more effective and fun your trip is gonna be. My next example is about the flight itinerary that I told you guys earlier. So my flight itinerary is showing me that I have 2 stops before making it to Japan.
So you have to stop at 2 other airports before you get to Japan. You have 2 other layovers. It's really nice when you have a very clear and detailed flight itinerary. That way you're not confused about when is my next flight.
Exactly. So you know the gate that you should go in order to get to the next flight.
And you know what specific time that flight is supposed to leave. And what time you will be arriving in Japan. That way, if you have a friend picking you up, you can tell them way in advance, I should be there around 10 p.m. rather than leaving them guessing and having to wait in the airport.
And once again, everything is really detailed, so you have the control over it. So you know exactly what you should do in order for you to have a fun trip. Number 11, aside or apart from something. There is also a place called Reader Rock Garden. It's a bit touristy, but they do serve great coffee and desserts.
Aside from coffee and stuff, is there anything else to see?
So when using these phrases, make sure your pronunciation has to be clear, apart or aside. So first of all, we'll have to go through the pronunciation for the word apart. Apart is like part of something. Now we have a in front, so you have apart, apart. So the T here, notice the way that I stop it, and in order to make it a stop T sound, you have to put your tongue in the right position to stop it. Apart, apart, and then from. It's just easier and more native that way because you don't have to like pause and you don't have to like enunciate the T, so the word from is gonna flow very smoothly. And the second word is aside, assigned. A lot of people, after using the word assigned for a while, they decided to embed an N sound in the middle and they say assigned, assigned, and it is wrong. Because assigned doesn't have the end in the middle, so you can't say assigned. But it has to be aside, aside. So think about it as the first one, aside, aside, aside. That part, say it first, and then at the end, and then you'll have assigned. And then when you say it fast enough, it's gonna be aside, aside.
Now to use this phrase or these phrases, it is a preposition. And it is used to add in more information similar to the phrase in addition to. So when you're adding in more information, new facts, or even trying to ask for more information, like I did in the conversation. So what I had said is, aside from the coffee shop or aside from the cafe, is there anything else to see there? So I'm asking David for more information about the Reader Rock Garden. And think of it similar to the word besides. So going back to the conversation, I could change it and use the word besides. So besides the coffee shop, is there anything else to do there? Again, I'm just asking for more information here. Now these phrases are pretty easy, so we'll give you some examples that you can practice along with us. Apart from your love of English, is there any other reason you want to learn it? So I'm asking, apart from or aside from your love for English, give me more information on why you want to learn it.
Maybe you learn it for your work. Maybe you learn it because it's a mandatory subject in your school. So you have other reasons as to why you want to learn English. It's just similar to the next example I have here. Walking is a very good way to decompress yourself after a long day, apart from many other solutions.
So you're just adding in more information that walking is a great way to decompress, but you're also acknowledging that there are other ways to do it, other activities that you can do to decompress.
And in this example, decompress means relax or make yourself calmer after a long day at work. Maybe you have to deal with a lot of hassles and struggles at work. Now is the time for you to decompress, to relax. And a good way to do it is to walk. And walking is just one of the ways amongst a lot of others.
Number 12, something full of something.
Yeah, they have a garden full of paths and walkways. There's also a beautiful bridge and a small gazebo there.
The pronunciation is pretty easy. We're just doing the connecting sounds between full and of. You bring the from full over to of, and you'll say love, love, full of something. And that is the only pronunciation point I have for you guys.
Now, something full of something is used when you want to say that something contains too much of something else. Let's say a person with his head full of knowledge, or a cup full of tea in it. You can also say a bank account full of money.
That would be nice. I would love a bank account full of money. That means I have a lot of money inside of my bank account. So the bank account contains the money.
And going back to the conversation I had with Maddie, I talked about Reader Rock Garden as a garden full of paths and walkways. It has the same meaning here. The garden has so many walkways and paths. And if you are in love of walking, that place is not only green, but it has a lot of walkways for you to walk. When using this expression, you don't use the word with, like the example I have here. A family full of laughter and happiness is what I want for my marriage. So notice, a family and then full of laughter and happiness. A family that has what? That has a lot of laughter and happiness. Like everybody in it is enjoying what? Laughter and happiness. So everybody feels happy. Everybody laughs all the time. And I'm not saying a family with full of laughter and happiness. With there doesn't fit.
That would sound very odd if anybody tried to add with in that sentence. It would not make any sense there. Even though you can still convey the meaning, it's grammatically wrong. Let me give you guys one more example. He threw a fistful of sand at his sister. This little boy must be very naughty to throw a fistful of sand at his sister. So the sand is contained within his hand. He has a fistful of it, and he's throwing it at his sister.
Number 13. A temporary respite from something. Nothing too fancy, but it is actually a peaceful place for you to go to for a temporary respite from the city's hustle. This phrase contains two words that you should have really good pronunciation for. The first one is temporary. 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 Don't say temporary because it's not going to be correct. Temporary. And also the second syllable has to start with the p sound. Temporary. Don't say temporary. Alright? So temporary. And the next word is respite or respite. And the T sound right there, notice that I stopped it. So respite. I don't say a temporary respite because it takes more work and effort that way.
Now, the meaning of this phrase is a short break or temporary escape from something that is unpleasant or just from something that is so busy, hectic, chaotic. So in the conversation, David said that the garden is a great temporary respite from the city's hustle. So the city is so busy that you want a short break or a short escape. And the garden is a great way for that. So let's give you some examples so this phrase makes more sense. I have one example here for you guys. Going to the superstore right now is a great temporary respite from my computer. So working all day at the computer is unpleasant. I don't like it. I want a short break. And that short break being going to the superstore. I'm just taking a short break away from my computer, and superstore is the greatest way to do that right now.
Just like the next example I have here. Holidays are considered a temporary respite from the business of work life. Because work life, you have to work every day. You feel tired. And at some point, the whole thing, the business of your work life has become a little unpleasant. And in order for you to recharge, you need to get on some holidays. And those holidays are considered a great temporary respite from the business of your work life.
You're taking a great short break from the hectic, chaotic, unpleasant feeling of always working. We need that short break throughout the year to enjoy, relax, unwind. So holidays are a great temporary respite. Number 14, something's worth something, or something's worth doing something.
Ooh, that sounds really cute. I might go check it out this weekend to see if it's worth visiting.
So there's only one word we really have to worry about here, and that is the word worth. Worth. That in worth needs to be there. Don't drop it. Don't say woof, woof. You can't do that. Worth. Earth. If you have to say it slowly at first, that is completely fine. It is better to build great habits now than saying it incorrectly and confusing somebody else. So, worth, worth. Say it slowly with me. Worth, worth. And a little bit faster. Worth, worth.
Now, these expressions are used to talk about something is useful, valuable, or beneficial to somebody. Let's go back to the conversation that we had. Maddie said it's worth visiting to see if it's worth visiting. If a place is worth visiting, that means she's gonna check it out to see if the place is a good place for her and her family to visit. Now, the trickiest thing when it comes to these phrases, usage, is what comes after the word worth. So after the word worth, you can use a price, a unit of measurement for value, or even time. And these are the first option that you have. So for the price, let's say that house is worth $100 million. But for the unit of measurement for value, let's say the Lamborghini is worth my house. And notice after the word worth, I use my house. And my house in this situation is used as a unit of measurement for value. Maybe it's worth $500,000 or maybe $1 million, but I don't want to talk about it. I just want to compare how much the Lamborghini is worth. And for the last thing in this first option is about time. So it's worth the time, or maybe reading that book is worth the time. Maybe after reading it, you'll have more knowledge, or it'll give you more ideas of how to solve your problems. So it's worth the time. So once again, for this first option, you'll have price, units of measurement for value, and the last one is time. And then the second option you have for the part that comes after the word worth is a verb ending in ing. It's just like the sentence that Maddie said in the conversation with me. She said to check it out if it's worth visiting. After the word worth, she used visiting, and that's a verb. The verb is visit, and she ended in ing. So visiting, it's worth visiting. And those are the two options of what come after the word worth. Now, let me give you some examples. The first one I have is, this house is worth buying. Notice after the word worth, I use buying. It's a verb, and the verb is buy. It ends in ing. So it's worth buying. The house is worth buying.
And one more example. It's worth the time applying for the scholarship. So the time, like David said earlier, is coming after the word worth. Worth the time applying for the scholarship. And all that means is the time you spent to apply is worth it. You don't know if you're going to get it or not, but if you do get it, then that would be amazing. That's something that's great. It will be very beneficial for you to take the time to apply.
And the last phrase, one of the most, and then you have an adjective and a noun. Exactly. I heard that it just added more skeletons to the museum. Not only that, they also have tour guides to take you through the valley. I did it last year, and it was honestly one of the most memorable experiences I had. There are a few pronunciation points here you should be aware of. The first one is one of the most. We're talking about the connected speech for these words. One of the most. Practicing with this one at a slow speed, make sure you are used to it before speeding it up, because most of the time, native speakers will say these words as if there's just one word. And they're gonna say it really fast, that's why you need to speed up as well. One of the. And the second point you should remember is most. Most. Don't say most, because the O sound, it has to be round and very enunciated. Most. And then this word ends with the ST sound, and these are voiceless consonants. So most. One of the most.
Now this phrase is used to talk about something that is amongst many others with the same exact quality. So going back to the conversation with David, walking through the valley with the tour guide was one of the most memorable experiences he's had. So how many experiences did he have?
A lot. Many.
And what were the quality of those experiences?
Those experiences are memorable.
And memorable is the quality of those experiences. Walking through the valley with the tour guide was one of the most memorable amongst many others. Now, keep in mind that the noun has to be in plural form. Do not make it singular. So don't say one of the most memorable experience, because then that's not one of the most memorable experiences. Another thing to do is if you want to use the word most, then you'd have to use a long adjective. A long adjective is a word containing 2 or more syllables, like beautiful, extravagant, and a few other ones. So one of the most beautiful places, one of the most extravagant restaurants. But let's say you want to use a short adjective like good, cute, hard. Then you wouldn't say one of the most cute, one of the most hard, one of the most good. That does not make sense. It is incorrect. What you would say is one of the cutest, one of the greatest, or one of the hardest. So just take note of these differences depending on what adjective you are using. Let's give you some examples so this phrase makes more sense. She is one of the cutest people I know. So how many people do I know?
A lot.
Of course. And what is the quality?
They're cute.
So she is one of the cutest among a lot of people, with a lot of people that I know.
So it's real simple and straightforward with Maddie's example, just like how it is for the next example I have here. So the movie we saw last night was just one of the most heartbreaking tearjerkers of all time. So how many tearjerkers we have here?
A lot.
And what's the same quality of these tearjerkers?
Heartbreaking.
That means they're so sad. They make you cry. That's why they're called tearjerkers. Tearjerkers. And we have a lot here. And notice heartbreaking is not a short adjective. It contains more than 2 syllables. In fact, heartbreaking has 3 syllables. That's why you use most. The most, one of the most heartbreaking tearjerkers of all time.
Those are all of the phrases that we have for you for Conversation 12. Again, watch this video and practice along with us, making your own examples or shadowing along with us. That way you have these phrases deeper in your mind and a better understanding of them. Another great thing to do is go back and rewatch the conversation and see if you understand everything that is going on.
And like I said at the beginning of this video, for one video, in order to grasp its context and information and meaning at a very deep level, you guys shouldn't just watch it for once. but you should rewatch it multiple times. And like Maddie said also, the best way to do it is when you shadow along. So make sure that you are aware of everything that's said so you can imitate and shadow along with it.
It's really important to practice along, otherwise you're not getting the most out of these videos. And you wouldn't be prepared for the next video where I'm asking you questions about the conversation. So again, practice as much as you can. Practice makes perfect.
And keep in mind, Conversation 12 is just one of the 75 conversations we're intended to make for you guys to achieve English. So if you like this video, don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out any of our future videos.
Another thing to do is comment below on something that you would like to see, and maybe you'll see it in one of our conversations.
Or maybe you can create some examples with these 15 phrases that we talk about in this video, and please make sure that you leave it down in the comment below so we can go over and give you some feedback.
That is all for today's video. I hope you guys found it helpful, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.